My name is Grace Martin. I'm 33 years old and work as a marketing manager at Pinnacle Marketing Group in Denver. I've always believed family meant equal love and support, that blood ties were unbreakable bonds formed in trust and mutual respect. But life has a way of revealing harsh truths when you least expect it. Everything changed the day of our college graduation. I still remember standing alone outside what should have been our celebration. The pristine white tent gleamed under the May sunshine, laughter and champagne glasses clinking from within. Music drifted through the air as guests celebrated my twin sister's accomplishments. Just hers, not mine. "You're just not the one to celebrate," my mother had said earlier that morning, her voice matter-of-fact as she adjusted Emily's graduation cap. "Emily's the one people came to see." What they didn't know was that I wasn't the failure they thought I was. What I did next changed my life and theirs forever. Emily and I entered the world 17 minutes apart. Me first, then her. Maybe those 17 minutes made all the difference. Growing up, Emily became the golden child, charismatic, outgoing, the daughter whose achievements were displayed prominently throughout our family home. I was the responsible one, the quiet achiever. My report cards with straight A's would receive a cursory glance while Emily's B- in art class warranted celebration dinners. My parents claimed they loved us equally, but actions speak louder than words. By the time we reached adulthood, Emily had cultivated an impressive social media presence. Her Instagram following grew to 250,000, her glamorous posts garnering thousands of likes. She called herself an aspiring influencer, though her aspirations seemed limited to posting carefully curated photos of herself at trendy Denver restaurants and exclusive parties. Our parents, Linda and Robert Martin, beamed with pride at Emily's digital fame. "She's building a brand," my father would say, nodding approvingly as Emily showed him her latest sponsored post for a teeth-whitening product. I graduated with honors in marketing and business administration. My name appeared on the dean's list every semester. I secured an internship at Pinnacle Marketing Group that turned into a full-time position before graduation. None of these accomplishments warranted special attention in the Martin household. Emily's boyfriend, Chad, an investment banker with slicked-back hair and a permanent smirk, fit perfectly into the family dynamic. He'd throw his arm around my father during family gatherings, discussing stock portfolios and golf handicaps. Whenever I'd mention a work achievement, Chad would interrupt with, "That's cute, but did Emily tell you about her new partnership deal?" The pattern of favoritism was relentless and unmistakable. In August 2015, I sat at our parents' kitchen table, discussing my student loan repayment plan. I'd worked part-time throughout college, but still had $5,000 in loans to repay. "You should have applied for more scholarships," my mother said, barely looking up from her tablet. 20 minutes later, Emily burst through the door, announcing she wanted to start a lifestyle blog. Without hesitation, my mother retrieved her checkbook and handed Emily a $10,000 check. "To get you started," she said warmly. "Don't look so shocked, Grace," my father added, noticing my expression. "Emily has a real opportunity here." The implication was clear. I didn't. By December 2017, I'd received a promotion at Pinnacle, becoming their youngest junior marketing strategist. When I shared the news over Christmas dinner, my father shook his head. "Marketing is so ordinary," he said. "You'll never be as popular or successful as Emily. Her follower count just hit 200K. On May 15, 2019, during a family dinner celebrating my parents' anniversary, Emily recounted a story about me failing a driving test as a teenager. A complete fabrication. "Remember how she couldn't parallel park and the instructor had to take over?" Emily laughed, as our parents joined in. "That never happened," I said quietly. "You're too sensitive, Grace," my mother replied. "We're just joking." The gaslighting became as familiar as the favoritism. Our college graduation ceremony took place on a perfect May day in 2016. The sky was a brilliant blue, and the campus quad was transformed with rows of white chairs and a stage adorned with the university's colors. I sat among my fellow graduates, the tassel on my cap occasionally brushing against my cheek in the gentle breeze. When my name was called, Grace Martin, summa cum laude, I walked across the stage, accepting my diploma with pride. From the audience, I could hear a single whoop that I recognized as my cousin Emma's voice. My parents' applause was polite but restrained. Minutes later, Emily Martin was announced. The audience erupted with my parents' enthusiastic cheers. My father stood, clapping vigorously. My mother whistled between her fingers. From where I sat, I could see them beaming with unadulterated pride. After the ceremony, my cousin Emma found me among the crowd of graduates. "Congrats, Grace," she said, hugging me tightly. "Summa cum laude. That's incredible." "Thanks, Emma," I replied, genuinely appreciative of her enthusiasm. "So, I'll see you at the party tomorrow, right?" she asked. I blinked in confusion. "What party?" Emma's smile faltered. "The graduation party at the Willowbrook estate? Your mom's been planning it for months." My stomach dropped. This was the first I'd heard of any party. That evening, when I asked my parents about it, my mother sighed as if I'd asked the most inconvenient question. "It's Emily's graduation party," she explained, arranging finger sandwiches on a platter in our kitchen. "We've booked the Willowbrook estate." "But I graduated today too," I said, my voice small despite my attempt to sound assertive. My father looked up from his newspaper. "Grace, be reasonable. We can't afford two parties, and Emily has all her Instagram followers to think about. This is a networking opportunity for her." "We could have had one party for both of us," I suggested. My mother's laugh was sharp. "And divide the attention? No. This is Emily's moment. She's worked hard for this." "I worked hard too," I said. "I graduated with honors." "Book smarts aren't everything, dear," my mother replied dismissively. "Emily deserves this celebration. You didn't excel in the ways that matter." The Willowbrook Estate was one of Denver's most prestigious venues, a sprawling property with manicured gardens and a grand ballroom. The party must have cost at least $20,000, a sum my parents apparently could afford for one daughter, but not both. The next day, I arrived at the Willowbrook Estate wearing the nicest dress I owned, a simple black cocktail dress I'd purchased for job interviews. The parking lot was filled with luxury vehicles. Inside, the ballroom was transformed with twinkling lights, floral arrangements, and a professional photographer capturing every moment. A large banner read, "Congratulations, Emily." There was no mention of my name. Emily was at the center of it all, resplendent in a designer dress, posing for photos with our parents. Chad stood nearby, champagne flute in hand, laughing with my father about something. I hovered at the periphery, feeling like an uninvited guest at what should have been, in part, my celebration too. "Grace," my mother called, beckoning me over. For a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. "Could you help serve the hors d'oeuvres? The catering staff is short-handed." And so, on the day meant to celebrate my academic achievements, I found myself carrying trays of canapés to guests who barely acknowledged my presence. When my father clinked his glass for a toast, the room fell silent. "To our beautiful, talented daughter Emily," he announced, his voice swelling with emotion. "We always knew you were destined for greatness. This is just the beginning of your journey to success." Glasses raised, cheers erupted. I stood in the corner, still holding a serving tray, invisible. My cousin Emma found me later, her face a mixture of confusion and sympathy. "I don't understand," she whispered. "Why aren't they celebrating you too?" I had no answer that wouldn't crack my carefully maintained composure. Later that night, I sat in my 2014 Toyota Corolla in the parking lot of the Willowbrook Estate. Through the windows of the ballroom, I could see the celebration continuing without me. Tears blurred the twinkling lights into a smear of color. I made one last attempt at reason, approaching my mother as she stepped outside for air. "Mom," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Emily and I graduated together. Why not celebrate both of us?" She looked at me with a mixture of impatience and pity. Grace, you need to understand your place. Emily shines. You, support. That's the natural order of things. In that moment, something crystallized within me. A realization that had been forming for years finally solidified into certainty. I would never be enough for them, not as I was. My achievements, my hard work, my very existence was secondary to Emily's. That night, I swore I would never let them define my worth again. I would build something they couldn't ignore or dismiss, and when the time was right, they would see exactly what they had overlooked. What my family didn't know, what I had carefully concealed from them for years, was that I wasn't just a marketing manager at Pinnacle. 2 years into my job at Pinnacle, I launched a side business, Cozy Crafts LLC, an Etsy-based home decor brand specializing in handcrafted items with modern, minimalist designs. What began as a creative outlet quickly evolved into a thriving business. I started small, hand-poured candles, woven wall hangings, and custom ceramic pieces. Each item reflected my aesthetic: simple, elegant, functional. I reinvested every penny of profit back into the business, expanding my product line and improving my craft. By 2019, Cozy Crafts had grown beyond anything I could have imagined. I hired 3 part-time artisans to help fulfill orders. I rented a small studio space in downtown Denver where I could work and store inventory. My annual revenue exceeded $350,000, more than my salary at Pinnacle. But that wasn't all. I lived frugally, saving and investing aggressively. My investment portfolio grew steadily, approaching $600,000 by early 2023. I became a silent partner in 2 Denver restaurants, the Blue Oak Bistro, an upscale farm-to-table establishment, and Tuscany Gardens, a cozy Italian restaurant in the Art District. Perhaps my most significant achievement was developing a marketing analytics tool during my time at Pinnacle. I noticed inefficiencies in how client data was tracked and analyzed, so I created a solution. With my company's permission, I patented the tool and began receiving royalties from its licensing. All of this I kept hidden from my family. At gatherings, I remained just Grace, the steady, unremarkable daughter with the ordinary marketing job. I drove the same Toyota Corolla. I wore modest clothing. I never contradicted their perception of me as less successful than Emily. Meanwhile, Emily's Instagram following grew, but her attempts at monetizing her influence were sporadic and unfocused. She'd promote products without developing genuine partnerships. She'd announce business ventures that never materialized beyond glossy photo shoots. Behind her curated online presence was a reality of maxed-out credit cards and financial dependence on our parents. I watched this unfold with a detached curiosity. Part of me wanted to help her, to share what I'd learned about business development and sustainable growth. But each time I considered reaching out, I remembered standing in the corner of the Willowbrook estate, invisible on what should have been my day too. So I remained silent and continued building my invisible empire. By early 2023, I began planning for a reckoning, not out of malice, but out of a deep need for recognition. Not just from my family, but from myself. I needed to stand in my truth. I gathered evidence, screenshots of text messages where my parents and Emily mocked my career and life choices, bank statements proving my financial independence and success, documents showing my ownership stakes in various businesses, patent paperwork for my analytics tool. In March 2023, I consulted with Whitfield Legal Group regarding intellectual property protection and potential defamation issues. I wanted to ensure that when I finally revealed my success, I would be legally protected from any attempt to diminish or claim credit for what I had built. "Ms. Martin," my attorney said during our consultation, "you've built something impressive here, and entirely on your own. You have every right to protect it." The timing had to be perfect. I learned through family gossip that my parents were planning an extravagant 30th birthday celebration for Emily at the Belmont Plaza in Chicago on November 5th. It would be a lavish affair with a substantial guest list: family, friends, and Emily's more prominent followers. The perfect stage was being set. As the date approached, I prepared meticulously. I commissioned a sleek professional presentation outlining my business ventures and successes. I purchased a designer dress, a deep emerald gown that cost $3,000, a small indulgence after years of restraint. I arranged for my most successful product lines to be displayed in the venue's antechamber. My boss at Pinnacle, Victoria Hayes, agreed to attend as my guest. Over the years, she had become not just my supervisor, but a mentor who recognized my talents and supported my growth, both within the company and in my independent ventures. "Are you sure about this?" Victoria asked when I explained my plan. "Family revelations can be messy." "I'm not doing this to hurt them," I explained. "I'm doing this to reclaim my narrative." She nodded, understanding. "Then I'll be there to support you." November 5th, 2023, arrived with a crisp autumn chill in Chicago. The Belmont Plaza stood elegant against the city skyline, its crystal ballroom prepared for Emily's celebration. I arrived early, working with the event staff to set up my product display in the antechamber, an unassuming addition that the arriving guests would notice but not immediately connect to me. Victoria accompanied me, helping arrange the cozy crafts items with professional precision. "Your work is exquisite," she said, adjusting a hand-woven wall hanging. "They'd have to be blind not to see your talent." As guests began to arrive, I positioned myself near the entrance, greeting family members who did double takes at my transformation. The emerald dress hugged my figure, complemented by subtle makeup that accentuated my features without masking them. My hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, fell in soft waves around my shoulders. "Grace?" my Aunt Margaret gasped. "You look stunning." "Thank you," I replied with genuine warmth. "It's a special occasion." My parents arrived with Emily, who was dressed in a revealing white gown that seemed designed specifically for Instagram photos. Chad followed, already looking slightly intoxicated. My mother barely glanced at me, her attention fixed on ensuring Emily's entrance was appropriately dramatic. My father nodded in my direction, the most acknowledgement I could expect. The evening proceeded according to plan. Dinner was served, champagne flowed, and conversation hummed throughout the crystal ballroom. I sat at a table with distant relatives, engaging politely but minimally. Victoria sat beside me, a calm, supportive presence. After the main course, my father stood for his inevitable toast to Emily. He spoke at length about her beauty, her charisma, her social media success, qualities that, in his mind, defined achievement. "To Emily," he concluded, raising his glass, "the daughter who continues to make us proud with her extraordinary accomplishments." Applause followed, along with the tinkling of crystal glasses. Emily beamed, basking in the adoration. Then she took the microphone herself. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate me," she began, her voice carrying the practiced cadence of her video posts. "As I enter my 30s, I'm so grateful for the constant support of my amazing parents, who always believed in me and my potential." I felt a surge of resolve rise within me. It was time. I approached the small stage area, my heart pounding but my steps steady. Emily noticed me and faltered mid-sentence. "Excuse me," I said, my voice clear and confident. "May I say a few words?" Confusion rippled through the room. Emily looked to our parents, who appeared equally perplexed. This wasn't part of their program. "I'll be brief," I added, extending my hand for the microphone. Perhaps out of shock, Emily handed it over. I turned to face the audience, family members, friends, and influencers who knew me only as Emily's unremarkable twin. For those who might not remember, I'm Grace Martin, Emily's twin sister. A small laugh bubbled through the crowd, though it held an uncomfortable edge. Today we're celebrating Emily's 30th birthday, a milestone worth acknowledging. I paused, meeting my parents' gazes. They looked wary, but not yet alarmed. Family celebrations make us reflect on our journeys, and I'd like to share mine with you tonight. I gestured to Victoria, who activated the presentation I had prepared. A large screen descended from the ceiling, and the ballroom lights dimmed slightly. The first slide appeared, the Cozy Crafts LLC logo, alongside photos of my products and screenshots of my Etsy shop's impressive statistics. 7 years ago, I founded Cozy Crafts LLC, I explained, my voice steady. What began as a small Etsy shop has grown into a business with over $350,000 in annual revenue. Murmurs spread through the audience. Emily's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. My mother's smile froze on her face. I continued through the slides. Documentation of my silent partnerships in the Blue Oak Bistro and Tuscany Gardens. Patent information for my marketing analytics tool. Graphs showing the growth of my investment portfolio. I've built these ventures quietly, without fanfare or social media announcements, I said, because true success isn't measured in likes or followers, but in sustainable growth and financial independence. The room had fallen completely silent. Even the servers had paused to watch. Now you might wonder why I'm sharing this tonight, at my sister's birthday celebration. I clicked to the final slides, screenshots of text messages sent between my parents and Emily, dismissing my achievements and mocking my career path. For years, I've been told I wasn't enough, I continued, my voice softening not out of weakness but precision. That I didn't excel in ways that matter, that I would never be as successful as Emily. I looked directly at my parents, whose faces had drained of color. On the day of our college graduation, you threw a $20,000 party for Emily alone. You had me serve drinks to guests while everyone toasted her accomplishments. You told me I wasn't the one to celebrate. Gasps emerged from several corners of the room. My cousin Emma nodded vigorously, confirming my account. For years, you told me I was invisible, I said, my voice clear and unwavering. Tonight, I'm showing you that while you were focused elsewhere, I was building my own empire. I placed the microphone on the small table beside the stage and turned to leave. But my mother's voice stopped me. "Grace!" she called out, her tone a mixture of anger and panic. "What are you doing? You're ruining Emily's birthday." I turned back. "No, Mom, I'm simply sharing my truth. The real question is, what have you been doing for the past 30 years? Emily stepped forward, her face flushed with a combination of embarrassment and rage. "That's all lies," she exclaimed, pointing at the screen. "You're making this up to steal my spotlight." Victoria stood then, her professional demeanor commanding attention. As Grace's supervisor at Pinnacle Marketing Group, I can verify that everything she's presented is factual. Grace is not only one of our most valuable employees, but an impressive entrepreneur whose work we admire. My father approached, his expression unreadable. "Grace, can we talk privately? This isn't the appropriate venue for family discussions." "That's where you're wrong, Dad," I replied calmly. "For years, you've publicly celebrated Emily while publicly diminishing me. The venue seems entirely appropriate." Aunt Margaret rose from her seat, her voice cutting through the tension. "I always suspected there was more to Grace, Robert, Linda. You should be ashamed of yourselves." Chad, who had been watching with increasing discomfort, suddenly stood and stormed out, muttering something about this whole family being crazy. As the reality of the situation settled over the room, I made my way to the exit. Victoria beside me, in the antechamber. Guests had gathered around my Cozy Crafts display, examining the pieces with new interest and respect. "Grace," my father called, following me. "You can't just drop this bomb and leave." I turned to face him one last time. "I'm not leaving permanently. Dad, I'm just stepping away to let you process what you've learned tonight. We can talk when you're ready to see me, really see me, for who I actually am." With that, I walked out of the Belmont Plaza, the cool Chicago air filling my lungs like the first breath of a new life. The fallout was swift and multifaceted. By the next morning, clips from Emily's party, recorded by her Instagram followers, had gone viral. Local Chicago news picked up the story of the family drama. Overlooked twin reveals secret success at sister's birthday bash. Emily's carefully curated social media presence crumbled under scrutiny. Her followers, drawn to authenticity, began questioning the genuineness of her online persona. Within a week, she'd lost over 50,000 followers. Sponsors quickly followed suit, canceling partnerships. My parents' standing in their social circle suffered a similar blow. Friends who had witnessed their favoritism over the years but remained silent now felt emboldened to distance themselves. Invitations to country club events dwindled. The whispers behind their backs grew louder. In December, I received a call from my father. His voice lacked its usual confidence. "Grace," he said, sounding tired, "we need to talk. Your mother and we've been doing some reflecting." We arranged to meet at a neutral location, a quiet cafe in downtown Denver. When I arrived, I was surprised to find only my father waiting. "Mom couldn't come?" I asked, sliding into the booth across from him. He looked older somehow, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. "Your mother and I are separating," he said bluntly, after everything came to light. Well, it forced us to confront some hard truths about our marriage, not just our parenting. I hadn't anticipated this, despite everything. My parents' relationship had always seemed solid, united in their favoritism, if nothing else. "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. He shook his head. "Don't be. It's been a long time coming." He paused, turning his coffee cup slowly. "I owe you an apology, Grace, a substantial one." "Yes," I agreed. "You do?" "I don't have a good explanation for why we treated you and Emily so differently." He continued. "Your mother always favored her, and I guess I went along with it. It was easier, and over time, it just became our normal." "That doesn't make it right," I said quietly. "No, it doesn't." He met my gaze directly for perhaps the first time in years. "I'm proud of what you've built, Grace. I'm ashamed that I didn't see it, that I didn't support you." It was a start, but decades of emotional neglect couldn't be erased with a single conversation. "What happens now?" I asked. "That's largely up to you," he replied. "I'd like a chance to know the woman you've become, if you'll allow it." I considered this. I'm open to trying, but it will take time and effort on both our parts. He nodded, understanding the conditional nature of my offer. As for Emily, her reaction took a different path. Initially, she lashed out, sending angry text messages accusing me of sabotage and jealousy. When those went unanswered, she attempted to diminish my businesses online, leaving negative reviews that were quickly identified as retaliatory and removed. Without our parents' financial support, which had diminished as their marriage dissolved, Emily faced the reality of her situation. Her influencer career stalled. She reluctantly took a retail position at a boutique clothing store. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. She now worked selling the kind of clothes she once received for free to promote. In January 2024, I made a decision that had been forming in my mind for months. I would relocate to Seattle. Pinnacle had an office there, and Victoria supported my transfer. More importantly, Seattle offered distance, physical and emotional, from the family dynamics that had defined me for too long. Before leaving Denver, I filed a $500,000 defamation lawsuit against my parents and Emily for years of damaging statements that had potentially impacted my businesses. It wasn't about the money. It was about accountability. The legal action forced a family mediation session where, for the first time, we all sat together with a neutral third party to discuss the harm that had been done. "I never realized how much my words could hurt you," my mother admitted during the session, though her tone suggested she still didn't fully grasp the depth of the damage. "Words have power," I replied simply, "especially from parents to their children." The mediation resulted in a settlement, a public apology from my parents and Emily, along with a financial component that I directed to be donated to organizations supporting young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. By the time I moved to Seattle in February, the most acute phase of the family crisis had passed. My father and I maintained cautious communication. My mother, still struggling to reconcile her perception of me with reality, remained more distant. Emily and I established boundaries that acknowledged our shared history while respecting our very different paths forward. In Seattle, I expanded Cozy Crafts into a lifestyle brand. Opening a small storefront in a trendy neighborhood, I cultivated new friendships and professional relationships, a chosen family of supportive, genuine connections. On January 18th, at a business conference focused on sustainable entrepreneurship, I met James Northfield, a business consultant specializing in creative startups. His insightful questions about my company led to a dinner conversation that extended late into the evening, discussing everything from supply chain ethics to our favorite novels. "Your story is remarkable," he said as we shared dessert. "Building something meaningful while being underestimated, that takes extraordinary resilience." "Or stubbornness," I replied with a smile. "I'd like to hear more," he said. "About your business, yes, but also about you." For the first time in years, I felt seen, not for what I had accomplished, but for who I was at my core. The sensation was both unfamiliar and exhilarating. As winter melted into spring, I found myself settling into a life that felt authentically mine. My business thrived, my relationship with James deepened, and my sense of self-worth grew stronger each day. The journey from invisible daughter to visible, validated woman hadn't been easy or linear. The confrontation at the Belmont Plaza hadn't magically healed decades of hurt, but it had been necessary, a reclamation of my narrative and worth. Some days, I still catch myself wondering if I'm enough. Old wounds leave scars that occasionally ache, but then I remind myself of the empire I built when no one was watching, the truest testament to who I've always been. Not the forgotten twin, not the supportive shadow, just Grace, builder, creator, survivor, visible at last.